From the Library of Congress in Washington, D.C.
Today's concert is a very special concert for us. At the American Folklife Center, we have a good size of French-Canadian and Franco-American music in our archive, and I want to invite you to come and listen to it sometime if you can. But we have music from all over the United States. We have Franco-American music from Missouri, from Illinois, from Indiana, from Wisconsin, and don't even get me started about Louisiana. But we don't have very much from New Hampshire and New England. And as we all know, there's a very sizable Franco-American and French-Canadian community up in that part of the country. And so today we are bringing some of that the best music of that type to you today. And so without further going on, I want to introduce you to one of those talented state folk arts coordinators and acting directors of the New Hampshire State Arts Council, Lynn Martin-Grayton, who has been working with us to bring this concert to fruition here. So without further ado, I will introduce Lynn Martin-Grayton.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you so much for spending your lunchtime with us. As Betsy said, I am both the acting director and the traditional arts coordinator of our state arts agency. We are one of 50 state arts agencies, and there are one in each of the 6 U.S. jurisdictions. We are funded through a combination of appropriations from our state legislature and from the National Endowment for the Arts. And our job at the state level is to ensure that everyone has access to the arts in schools and in healthcare facilities and communities around the country. And many of the state arts agencies have what we call a traditional arts program, where there is a professional folklorist on staff whose role is really to identify and document and preserve our community-based traditions so that they will be around for another generation. Now, I'm going to ask you folks, I can see out there, how many of you have been to New Hampshire? Oh, wow, lots of hands. That's terrific. So for those of you who've been there, and for those of you who haven't, I'll just give you a little teeny description. New Hampshire is tucked way up in the north of northern New England. It's very skinny, and it has a very small population. We don't have a city larger than 40 or 50,000 people. It's very heavily forested, about 84% forest, and the rest is very watery. And we have lots and lots of lakes and rivers. And we have very, very long winters. And the other thing, as Betsy said, we share a northern border with Canada, with Quebec. So beginning in the 1800s, there was a lot of movement across that border, both people, and of course people bring their cultural traditions with them, their food and their music. And the music for most of northern New England is what we call fiddle-based. Most of it is played on an instrument that you might know as a violin, but played in a more community-based way. It gets known as a fiddle. And the French-Canadian folks who moved across that border and settled in northern New Hampshire, some worked in logging camps, some worked in the textile mills down in southern New Hampshire. But the way they enjoyed music is the way I'm going to invite you to enjoy it this afternoon, which is to pretend you're in their living room. Because this is the kind of music that is enjoyed in homes with family and community all around you. So I'm going to introduce you to Patrick Ross, who has participated in our program and our apprenticeship programs, and you're going to be taken on a musical journey by Patrick. So won't you welcome Patrick Ross from northern New Hampshire.
Thank you, Lynn, and thank you, Betsy. going to start with a tune that's called The Growling Old Man and the Old Woman. If you listen carefully, you can hear the groveling of the old man. Yeah, I'll get to it. And then you hear the old woman, I thought I told you to take out the trash. Yeah, I'll get to it. Thank you. So I wasn't quite sure me to come out here and to speak the Frenglish or the French or the Hinglish, so I decided I'll just talk like myself. But in northern New Hampshire, where I was born, in a small town called Colebrook, it's a crossroads. Just west, over the Connecticut River, which are the headwaters of the Connecticut River, which flow down. Oh, Ponkal's on it. He just ruined the surprise. No, 15 minutes. You'll see Gene in 15 minutes. He's excited, I can tell.
I want to meet you.
Okay. It's great. It's awesome. I'll get more into that. But as I was saying, the headwaters of the Connecticut River form in Pittsburgh, New Hampshire. And Pittsburgh, New Hampshire is on the Canadian border. And it flows right down between New Hampshire and Vermont. It's the border between the two states and flows down into Connecticut, into the ocean. And so Colebrook, New Hampshire is on the east side of the river. Canaan, Vermont is on the west side. And I grew up in Canaan, but the hospital, the local hospital to Canaan was in Colebrook, so I was born in Colebrook. However, just north of Canaan, actually out my bedroom window, was Canada, because my parents, they bought a motel in Canaan, and this motel was on a lake. And I can tell you, growing up on a lake as a boy, it's awesome. And half the lake is in Canada, and half the lake is in the United States. So it was very interesting, especially because there was a all-girls camp on the other side of the lake, and my dad would not let me use the motorboat, but that paddle boat got me in shape when I was a teenager, I'll tell you that. But that crossroads, Vermont, New Hampshire in Canada is really unique, and only as I grow older, now I'm 30 years old now, so I can look back and really cherish the things that it had to offer, because tell you what, up in northern New Hampshire there, they got skidders, and they're going up and getting stuck in the mud with 30 racks of beer, and tell you the Cunninghams, they like nothing more than to go and get their John Deeres to pull out in Fords. But then you cross over the river into Vermont. Right in the backwoods of Vermont, there got caught for jacking deer about 3 o'clock in the morning last night, tell you what. So, and then just about 500 feet north in Canada, the Quebecois folk, they talk the English like this. They eat their ham and egg for the breakfast every morning. And I never rehearsed that either. It's just living there and being a musician. Because, of course, you know, being a musician requires the use of the ears. When I was a boy, my dad taught me how to play music, but he taught me indirectly. He taught by example. He'd come home from work every day. He was a welder, though he liked to be known more for his fishing guide services. And he'd come home from work, and he'd always pull the fiddle off the mantle and play a couple tunes, and he always brought a genuine happiness to the instrument. I don't know if it was to decompress or not, but I'd just sit and watch, you know. And I lost my father. My family, we lost my dad. I found him dead of a heart attack when I was 11. But, you know, the music carries on. He learned from his dad, and learned from his dad. I want to play a tune right now that my dad taught me. It's called Ice on the Pond, or Ice on the Pond. Thank you. And I can remember sitting, you know, on my little chair, because I was about, well, when I learned that tune, I was 8 years old. And I can remember that the ending of the tune was really hard for me, but my dad was patient, and he said, just keep practicing, you'll get it, you'll get it. But when I first started out playing, the first tune I ever played was the rocking chair jig, and it sounded like this. And I'd bring down the house because I was 3 or 4 years old, and it's the only thing I could do. But what it taught me was that the bow goes in the right hand, the instrument goes in the left hand, and it taught me just basic, you know, control of the instrument. Of course, the instrument I had was it was covered in Mickey Mouse stickers, and it was probably about this big. But it grew from there, and so did I. And I can remember the first little ditty that my dad taught me. And I then graduated from the Mickey Mouse fiddle to a quarter-sized instrument, which is ironic because my dad had hooked up this instrument in a way that it had 2 quarters underneath the bridge to keep the bridge at the right height. I loved it. But what he did was he taught me basically where to put my fingers, but he also taught me to use my ears. And that's what I was referring to earlier with the dialects of the English language. And where I grew up, in that little dot in Vermont, New Hampshire, was it was a crossroads. And the music definitely represents that. And I'll get into that a little bit, but I want to play as much music as I can. And that little ditty was just like this. You don't have to clap for that one, but no, but from that was this huge, huge influence of the musical culture, which to this day is not nearly as vibrant as it was when I was a kid. And I'm so, so, so thankful that I was born at the tail end of that. Of course, it'd be better if it was still as vibrant as it was, but nonetheless. Fiddle contests were a huge event. They were so big that in Crosbury, Vermont, they had to shut the contest down because, believe it or not, biker gangs would go to this fiddle contest and raise hell and tip over fire trucks and stuff like that. There were 5,000 to 10,000 people at a fiddle contest. That's a lot of people. And so they closed that one down, but other fiddle contests were huge. And to this day, I'm not really into art as being a competitive thing. But when I was a kid, it was what I was around. And I was like, sure, whatever, you know. And it did motivate me. And it taught me the importance of intonation, timing, tone. And my dad loved to go to the fiddle contest, not so much to compete, because he didn't really rank. He's like, I don't care about that. He wanted to go for the jam sessions in the parking lots and, you know, and learn other tunes and meet the fiddlers that were at the last fiddle contest that he hadn't seen for a while or whatnot. But here's a tune, here's a demonstration of a piece that I polished from when I was about 14 until I stopped competing in fiddle contests back many years ago. It's called the Silver Dollar Waltz. Oh, and it's so nice to be on a stage with bright lights and not have judges sitting right in front of me. I just want to say that. So I could let the Frenchman that you saw come through the door earlier, I could let him tell the story, but basically this instrument was a gift from his father, from Jean's father. Bought this fiddle out of a catalog in 1942, out of a Montreal catalog, a Simpson catalog, and paid $29.99 for it. And as you can see, and I'm going to hold it up, it looks like it's been dragged behind a couple log trucks. It's got some tunes on it. But what I'm going to do for you now, check the time, see where I am in my schedule. Good. I'm going to change the tuning of this instrument to tell a story, a quick story, about a fella who, for some reason, ended up in the jail. And the bailiff had this old beater fiddle kicking around. And the guy was in the jail cell for a while and just kind of bored, sitting there twiddling his thumbs, eating his slop 3 times a day. And the bailiff decided to have a little fun. So he told the guy in the cell, he's like, "Hey, you, if you can play a tune on this fiddle, I'll let you out." Wow. So the guy took the fiddle. Of course, it was a beater fiddle. I could use other words for it, but it's called a hangman's reel, because the guy was going to be hung. And he made the fiddle sound like this. Like this. So the guy lives. He lived, and so the story goes. And that is of the French-Canadian heritage. What I was referring to earlier about dialects and being able to hear something and play it back, that's how I learned to play music. And that's how most people learn how to play music in traditional form, is somebody will play a little bit and then ask the apprentice to play it back. And so, or the student or the kid or the nephew or whatever. And so it would be a phrase. So at the beginning of a tune, the next tune I'm going to play is called Point O Pick. And it's almost a show tune, but I'm going to play just a few notes of that, and it would be sort of, and then my dad would be, okay, now it's your turn, and I'd be like, and good, no, now do it again, and do it again, and do it again, and do it again. So that was great, but having been born in 1982, it was before all this digital media, which I love. I have it when I'm smartphones, I call them. But having a cassette alarm clock when I was a kid probably made me the musician that I am, because it's all my parents could afford. And back then, a tape player alarm clock, that was pretty fancy. But my dad had a milk crate full of old cassettes. He wouldn't let me play with his record player because it was too fragile. But he had a collection of records, which I have today, and I learned tunes off that. And actually, this next tune I'm going to play, Point O Pick, is off a bunch of those records. But that little cassette player, I would fall asleep at night and hit play, and then as soon as I heard the click, at the end of the cassette, I'd wake up and I'd flip it over and hit play again and fall back asleep. Well, what that did was, because of that collection of fiddle tunes that he had in that milk crate, it was like reaching into a bag of, Plinko chips and throwing them in there. And it wasn't Megadeth, Metallica, AC/DC, Van Halen, all those things that my brother was listening to. It was just these old fiddle tunes. And so that's how I was able to someday start humming a tune or playing it on the fiddle. And I was like, I didn't learn that. Where did that come from? And so this is the tune that was on many of those cassettes and many of the records. It's called Point O Pick. And then I'm going to invite G now, but not now, not yet. So before I invite Jean out here, I just want to briefly touch upon the what distinguishes French-Canadian fiddle music from other fiddle music, because as you know, fiddle is found, or violin is found, in pretty much every country in the world. And The French-Canadian or Franco-American music is distinguished by what you just heard and the tunes before that, but more specifically in the bowing of it, but also in the left-hand ornamentation. Now, the left-hand ornamentation usually sounds a lot like Irish ornamentation. And for that reason, I'll just talk just a smidge about the bowing, because in French-Canadian music, there's a bounce to it. And so much so that sometimes it feels like the bow's just gonna fall out of my hand. And so I just gotta hang on for dear life, and you'll get a good example of that coming up here in a second. Hanging on for dear life, but so if I take just a basic melody, like Twinkle, Twinkle, Little Star, everybody knows, right? Okay, and take that, and then throw a little bounce into it. So that gives you an idea of like what the core skeleton of the tune is, just like the English language, and then from there you kind of put the lilt in it, or the accent, as Jean would say. Without any further ado, would you please welcome Jean Theroux.
Secret.
So we've said pretty much all we need to say. We're just going to play some music now and drive it home. Sexy old man. Arms, bells.
Un petit oiseau.
Là, on va vous chanter une petite chanson à répondre, which means we're going to sing a little song. It's called...
It's Little Bird. Les petits oiseaux in French. But I know better I'm French, don't forget that. I sing better in French. I had 24 years old when I first said my first words in English. I'm pure French, but I love everybody. I love you guys. I love everybody. Mon père avait un oiseau, il y avait de la plume, il y avait de la plume.
Mon père y avait un petit oiseau, il y avait la plume, il y avait la plume.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était beau, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était à vous, que ça me parlait comme vous.
Mon père avait un petit chien qui jappait pareil comme vous.
Ton père y avait un petit chien qui j'avais pareil comme vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était vous, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous. Mon père avait un petit chat qui miaulait pareil comme vous.
Ton père avait un petit beau, qu'elle ressemblait pareil comme vous.
Mon père avait un petit vache qui belait pareil comme vous.
Ton père y avait un petit vache qui belait pareil comme vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était vous, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était à vous, que je ressemblais comme vous.
Mon père avait un petit veau qui pleurait pareil comme vous.
Ton père avait un petit veau qui pleurait pareil comme vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était vous, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était à vous, que je ressemblais pareil comme vous.
Mon père avait un petit cheval qui naissait pareil comme vous.
Ton père y avait un petit cheval qui naissait pareil comme vous.
Tout le monde pensait que c'était vous, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous. Mon père avait un gros sein qui avait belé pareil comme lui. Tout le monde pensait que c'était lui, qu'elle ressemblait beaucoup à vous. Il y avait des petits oiseaux qui avaient de la plume, qui avaient de la plume. Il y avait des petits oiseaux qui avaient de la plume tout le long du dos. Thank you. That's the way the old party was 70 years ago.
Tu veux take that? Yep. Je peux aller chercher un pic de mon ami. On va jouer les 4 points de CM en
Ça fait mon vieux là. Ah ouais, puis un autre peut-être, mon vieux.
Non, c'est correct. Juste pour ce moment.
Thank you, everybody. We're fun, huh? Love that, huh?
Now, to move things forward, I'd like to invite out a friend of mine. He's the next generation of fiddling, and he has learned from me by ear a whole mess of these fiddle tunes. His name is Dalton Binette. We're going to play a tune for you, and what's it? Tu vas attendre juste une seconde, on va jouer juste une petite tune ensemble. We put together this tune because we were on this trip to Washington, D.C., and this tune is called Jefferson and Liberty, and it was written by none other than Thomas Jefferson.
I'm the youngest one, he's the oldest one.
So we're gonna close this concert out with a bunch of fiddle tunes, and we're gonna bring the full band out here with the other member that is not here yet. Would you please welcome Bo Thayer?
Bonjour.
Jean forgot his harmonica. He's very good on the harmonica. He'll be right back. Let's tune up. Let's go. You're all set. So I met Jean after my mother had passed away. Jean was actually renting a room in the motels. He was driving truck, and on the weekends he was running excavator for Rose Air Marquis. And he realized that my mother was having trouble keeping the motel afloat, you know, because when the dad dies and the kids are young. And so he pitched in here and there, and over the years they became really close friends. And he realized that my mother was taking me all over the place to these fiddle contests that were going on. And he's like, well, you know me, I played the fiddle too. It's been a long time, but I think I still have it. So he found his old fiddle and dusted it off and screeching and scratching. And finally I was like, well, hey, Gene, I'll play with you. And so 15 years later, here we are. We're going to do The Joys of Quebec, Les Joies du Québec.
I need a pump.
So we got a couple more tunes for you before we wrap things up, but I just found it really interesting. The way Gene learned how to play harmonica was because he was driving truck all the time, and it was a form of how he would keep himself awake, and that's how he got to play harmonica. I thought it was cool.
I don't smoke no cigar. I had to play something.
Golden Slippers.
Yeah, it's a good one.
Les Souliers Dorés. Thank you very much. So you have to imagine that this music was often played, as I think Lynn was referring to earlier, usually in the kitchen where the wood stove was. Winters get pretty darn cold up there. But even last night, we stayed up till midnight playing around in the motel room, you know, fiddle cases all over the beds and the rosin flying. And Jean says, I'm the hurly bird, me, I need to go to bed. So, but we're going to play one more for you, and I really want, on behalf of all of us up here, again, Dalton, Binette, Patrick Ross, Jean Theroux, and Bo Thayer, I want to thank Betsy, Thayer, and Lynn, and the Library of Congress for having us here. It's an honor and a privilege, and I hope you enjoyed yourselves. Let's see. Yeah, I gotta remember how that one starts. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen.
Please thank the band. Would you like to hear another? Would you like to hear a little more music from our band?
It was a bit trickier for him to play the accordion while driving truck, but nonetheless, he figured it out. It's in the Canadian key of A. Let's see.
Thank you, everybody. Thank you. Thank you.
This has been a presentation of the Library of Congress. Visit us at loc.gov.